Hey everybody, welcome to the 12th episode of the Open1 podcast. My name's Travis Cook, and today I'm joined with a good friend of mine and a fellow sister in battle, if you will, having stood shoulder to shoulder on the front lines many a time on the streets of London. Got Louise from Save Our Rights, and we're going to get into some of the pressing things we've got going on right now and take it to some interesting directions after that. So, Louise, hi, welcome to the show. How you doing?
I'm good, thanks. Thanks for having me, Travis. And it's been great to be on that front line with you.
Hasn't it, right? We've rocked it. I mean, we've done quite well to keep it going as well for so long. And obviously, you started it, so it's been like 2 years. This protest
hmm
movement itself has been rolling, that at least in that regard. So that's pretty awesome.
Yeah. 2 years of Unite for Freedom in
Yeah.
August this year. So, yeah, yeah.
And so, what would you say? Because going forward, we've got a protest coming up, and there's still things happening that we really, really don't want to be happening in our society. And what would you say the most pressing right now?
So currently there's 10 bills which are a huge threat to our security and our freedoms. And these bills are actually worse than any COVID regulations, in my opinion, because COVID always had to have an expiry date. It was always going to end at some point. Whereas these bills will be permanent changes, not just for this government, but for future governments as well. And they are a complete erosion of our rights but from every single angle. And that's what, so each one is problematic on its own, but when you put them together, we're calling it Operation Overreach on behalf of the government. They just want to overreach and just steal all of our bills and steal all of our rights even in every which way. And they're making one massive power grab right now while the cost of living crisis is ongoing, because they know that that is going to take up most people's energy, time, and focus. So they use cost of living issues and poverty and so on and so forth. It's well documented through history that the biggest power grabs happen during cost of living problems. So it's not unsurprising that they're doing this now, but it is something that we have to be really careful of, because history has shown that that is when the biggest problems come in.
So, what could you reckon you could outline the bills themselves? We can go into which, like, because there's you got these 10 bills here, and then there's like one here that has this part that we don't like, and there's another one over here. So if you
Mm-hmm.
could like wrap that all together.
Yeah, absolutely. So, first up is the Bill of Rights. So this is the main threat. So this is the one that is going to replace the Human Rights Act, 1998. And while they're saying that the articles will still remain, what they are doing is they're adding all this kind of extra clauses into it, which include things like the fact that they can take away our rights if it's in the greater good. And now anything and everything is arguable for the greater good. You could pretty much argue everything on that premise. So it means that our rights are continuously under threat by whatever the government deems the greater good, which is obviously what happened under COVID. And then it's also got extra things in there because basically they want to restrict our ability to get justice for our human rights being abused. Now, the main thing that gets challenged in human rights courses is when the state abuses our human rights. So if you're in a state institution, whether that's a care home, an orphanage, a school, a hospital, prison, police cells, and so on and so forth, and your human rights are upheld, you can take that to court and challenge the government and the state on that. However, what they're trying to do is trying to prevent that. They're also trying to prevent them being taken to court by adding in things like permission stages, and the government are putting in clauses so that they will be directing judges on how to make judgments. So it means that our human rights will be weakened, and then where there are human rights abuses, there'll be no way to challenge them. So that one's really problematic, and it's probably the most problematic, and people don't realize it's happening. The Human Rights Act in and of itself wasn't perfect, and probably could do with a reform, but this is not the reform it needs. So don't be fooled by people who go, oh, well, it wasn't good enough. No, okay, but this isn't the reform that's going to fix it.
It's almost going backwards.
Yeah, it's really problematic, and it gives the government a lot of control. And I don't know about you, but I don't really trust this government with my human rights.
No, not really.
Not really. They're
That's
not my favorite.
Yeah, it's like I guess part of maybe what they were like means testing the resistance, and what they use and what and how we fight back, and now they're sort of coming after all these different angles after the aftermath of COVID, hey?
Yeah, absolutely. Hoping that we're tired as well, which lots of people are, and I get it, but we have to keep going. We have to be energized. Now is the time to put more into it now than ever before. And we can't feel the effects of these bills yet because they're not in place, they're not enacted. And I get that. So it's harder to kind of see what it is that we're dealing with. But if we wait until we're feeling the effects of these bills, then it's too late.
Yeah, that's the thing, right? Exactly. Yeah.
It's too late. And the Bill of Rights, lots of people are concerned about social crediting systems. With our current Human Rights Act, they couldn't bring it in. This Bill of Rights is going to pave the way and make it really, really easy. And
so what was it that stopped the social crediting?
It's your right to privacy, your right to private family life. And so they could bring in a social crediting thing, but they couldn't make it mandatory. They couldn't restrict your access to kind of basic things if you didn't have it, and so on and so forth. But if they bring in the Bill of Rights and say that they can do it in the public interest, then it's an easy argue, well, in the public interest, we'll all have the social crediting app. We'll even give out free phones to people who don't have phones, so everyone can join in. And it's in the public interest because then we'll be able to track and trace. We'll know where all the criminals are. We'll know what you're spending your money on. We'll know everything there is to know. And we'll just have this safe utopia, lovely, wonderful world, you see. So they can argue it easily in terms of for the greater good. Whereas in the current Human Rights Act, that there isn't a clause for that. There isn't a premise for that. We have a right to our private and family life no matter what. And unless it's a threat to other people's right to life, or which is what they argued under COVID, then they can't take that right away. Whereas under the Bill of Rights, they easily can. So it's really problematic. And yeah, so we've got the Bill of Rights, but then for what you see is when you piece them all together, because one of the other bills is one called the Brexit Freedoms Bill, where we've left the EU. They had a lot of stringent laws and EU regulations. Some of them were just nonsense, and we're good to get rid of them. Like there was restrictions on sale of kettles and stuff like that. Like, yeah, cool, get rid of that.
Oh, yeah.
Nobody minds. But one of the ones they want to get rid of is GDPR. They want to have a less burdensome data rights regime. E.g., they want to just be able to share our data freely and it not to be protected. So, that sounds good. They go, oh, less burdensome, we'll just make it easy. Like, we'll make life easy for everyone. Yeah, easy for them to share our data between different organizations. So this is paving the way for, again, removing that piece of the puzzle that makes social crediting a bit difficult, which is like not being like banks can't share their data with Tesco's, and Tesco's can't share their data with the government and your doctors and stuff. Whereas if they take away,
when you put it like that, right? Yeah, man.
Yeah. So, and also they want to create a whole load of AI, modernizing outdated vehicle standards. So, that's another one where we're going to see cars demonized and so on and so forth. So the Brexit Freedoms Bill really just also paves the way for more of anything that people consider Agenda 2030 and so on and so forth, because again, it's all about kind of climate comes first over everything. And again, they can argue, if they've got the Bill of Rights in place, that climate issues are in the greater public interest, and therefore, no cars on Sundays, which is just locked down by another name, which is one of the things they've been talking about and so on and so forth. So
Has that actually been put forth as an idea here in the UK? No cars on Sundays.
I saw an article about it the other day. It was just an idea. It's not been
Yeah,
put
yeah,
forward
but
as a
even that it's being like, that
yeah,
we've got to that point now. Interesting.
yeah, because if people go places on Sundays, leave them alone. So that's the other bill, Brexit Freedoms Bill, and again, they wanting to get rid of all the Brexit EU legislation, and some of it is really important. We've got maternity pay, paternity pay, working times directives, banking regulations. Are those going to go? Like, it doesn't say so, but it doesn't say they won't. It doesn't say we're going to protect these bits. It's just saying that they want to get rid of as much as possible. So the Brexit Freedoms Bill has real potential to be problematic. And like I say, the loss of GDPR will be really problematic in this day and age. And then on top of that, you've got the Economic Crimes Bill. So again, where data sharing and stuff like that. Under this, Companies House, which runs all kind of businesses and like holds the data for businesses, are going to be given a whole load of power that they've never had before, power that they don't need even. So they'll be able to check, remove, decline information. So if you own a business and it's registered on Companies House, which all businesses are meant to be, they can edit it, they can change it, and they can be given investigation powers. They'll be able to demand various IDs from you. And again, you tie it all in together, they're going to know who's running what business. They're going to have all your ID. They're going to link it all up together. They're going to know exactly how much money's going through it all, and you link
So
it
is
all
there
back.
like a time frame of some of these bills? Are they what stages are they in?
So okay. So the Bill of Rights has, so the way the stages work is, first reading is when it's just introduced to the House. So like, it's just like, this is what the thing is. Second reading is where there's a vote. They can vote yes or no. Then they have a committee stage and report stage, which is where they can add amendments. Then it goes to third reading, which is like a reading of the amended version after the amendment stage, where they can vote yes or no. And then it goes to the House of Lords, where it does all the same things. The Bill of Rights has had its first reading. The second reading hasn't been announced, so that won't be till after September because they're on summer holidays now. Brexit Freedoms Bill hasn't had its first reading yet, but it's written up on the government's website about what they're planning to put in it. Same with the Economic Crimes Bill. That's not made it to the House yet. So they're all different stages, and I will run through that as we go now. And the other thing with the Economic Crimes Bill is they are looking at ways to be able to seize cryptocurrency. So
yeah, okay, interesting, huh?
so this will be the first time there will be legislation talking about seizing cryptocurrency. And I know that obviously people who buy into crypto go, well, they can't seize it. They're looking at ways to do that, right? They're working on that because they recognize, it's a decentralized currency, which doesn't suit them. Whether you believe in crypto or not, we can all agree it doesn't suit the central banks. And they want to work on how they can seize that. So that will be in the Economic Crimes Bill. Currently, it would only be if you're committing a crime, but it's the slippery slope downwards. And once they figure out a way of seizing it, then that's problematic. So so there's those which all went, like I say, when you tie them together, they're really problematic in terms of social crediting and freedom and stuff like that. And then you've got the national.
So what do you reckon? Like, if they were to get those all in place, how long realistically? Like 2 years, or 3 years, or less than that?
For what?
For so for each one of those bills, so then they've got all of them in place by that point. So it's like
they'd all have to be finished by the end of they'd all have to be done before the next general election. So but they'll probably all be done within the next year.
Yeah, really. We got
to
got to slow that down.
We've really got to work on this because this is way worse than anything else, because these are permanent. There's no expiry date on these like there was on COVID regs.
But the expiry date wasn't set in stone, though. Hey, that's something we could highlight for a moment. Is the resistance here, the people who never complied here, then the energy and power that was manifested during those times can once again be like tapped into for what we're facing right now. And now that there's so many more
Absolutely.
people like awake, we're in a quite a good situation. We can just, as soon as they do something we don't like, we can just hone in on it straight away.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, this is stuff that people who wouldn't necessarily have joined us on the COVID regs are horrified. We've been out doing some outreach locally, and people are like, "Oh, thank goodness somebody's doing something about this." They either didn't know, and they were like, "Oh my goodness," when you told them, or they did know, but they didn't know anybody was doing anything, and they were so grateful to find somebody that was doing something. So I think local outreach is going to be really vitally important to start, because you've got to bypass algorithms, social media, like it's just nonsense for that. And obviously it's not in the mainstream media. So we've got to find ways of reaching lots of people that we haven't reached before who will join us on this, because they're horrified when they either find out about it or they already know and are horrified but don't know that anybody's doing anything.
Yeah, right. It's uniting the people, and I can second that as well. Like this local outreach has been so powerful, just to reach out to your community, and the response you
Mm-hmm.
get. It's very very inspiring when you find that person who's like, wow, I'm so happy to find someone else like on my
Mm-hmm.
wavelength, and yeah, that's very powerful. So,
Yeah.
um, yeah, what would you reckon would be like the best way for people to like connect? What should they, what leaflet should they hand out? Do you reckon?
So there's we've called this Operation Overreach. So we're saying that the government is like enacting Operation Overreach, where they're overreaching into all of our human rights. So we've got on Save Our Rights, we have got a thing where you can email your MP about all 10 bills in one click. Like you just put your name in, your postcode, it finds your MP, and you can it'll send 10 emails to your MP all at once. And this is it's one of those things where, will they listen? Probably not. To be honest, I would be surprised if they did. But it's that thing of, if we don't email them, they'll always say, you should have emailed us. So you have to make sure you've covered all bases. And it's just that simple act. And what we can do as well, if you opt into the campaign, is we will email your MP on your behalf before each and every important vote for each and every bill. So if you sign up to the campaign in full, they'll send an email on the day you sign up, but then also we'll send extra emails on your behalf for each important vote, saying vote this way, do this, do that, so that base will be covered. And that's really important to make sure that base is covered, because if you don't cover that base, they go, oh, we didn't know. And it just gives them a really easy out. And
Yeah, I
then
think every single this war battle is on multiple fronts.
also, for the people that we're bringing in that are quite new, who aren't necessarily aware just how bad the government is and how bad the political system is, it's also a good easy in. So it's low risk, it's quick, it's simple. So it's like an easy action. Then the people feel good they've taken an action. But also, if it doesn't work, it means that we get to highlight to them and go, look, thousands of people emailed their MPs. They didn't listen. And it makes them kind of distrust the government more, be more likely to take action, frustrates them. They go, well, I did the right thing. Like, that was what we'd be told to do, is to email our MP and lobby our MP. We did that, and they didn't listen. And it gets people into a state of wanting to do more as well. So it's like, it's the benefits of emailing your MP. While it might not be that we get the bill changes that we want just from that, like, you can't just do that. But by doing that, like I say, you get to cover that base. You get to make sure they're hearing you. It makes them know that we know what they're up to. It means that it gives people an easy in, easy action. It's quick and simple. And if it doesn't work, it gets people in the mood to do more, like come on marches, and so on, which is going to be really important over this. We're going to have some really big marches to raise awareness, because again, people emailing their MP is one thing, but people being willing to come all the way to London and march for the day means the government goes, oh yeah, no, they really mean it. They really don't like this. They've been emailing me and now they're in London. Oh Lord, this is a
I can only
problem.
imagine how they felt when they saw the absolute army that was on the streets over last year.
Yeah. And before this, I worked in politics and I dealt with political lobbying and campaigns where people were lobbying the MPs. And what you never ever saw was persistence. You never saw what we did, which was going out every single month and getting bigger and bigger and bigger. That was what terrified them. That's why before that June one last year, they sent the police to my house to try and arrest me, because they just couldn't bear it, because it just kept getting bigger. And I'm like, arresting me isn't going to stop it, but sure, you can try, but it ain't going to stop it. And that has never been done before. People will, like, organizations will have like one or two protests, like everyone goes, oh, well, the Iraq war protest did nothing. Yeah, it was one giant protest, and then they all went home and never did it again. Like,
it didn't do anything. That was that's it, right? The tactics and man.
You've got to persist. And again, with emailing your MP, often on lobbying campaigns, they'll email their MP once, maybe twice. Whereas, because, like I say, if you opt in, we can keep emailing them whenever it's important. And they see kind of repeated emails coming in, they're going to go, oh, these people really know what they're doing. They're keeping an eye on everything that's going on. They really care about this. Again, not something that lobbying usually does. With the medical freedom issue, we were emailing MPs on a monthly basis from November 2020 through till when we got them overturned in January 2022. Is it January? Yeah, it was 2022, wasn't it? When we got it, yeah, it was January, wasn't it? When we got the NHS mandate overturned.
Yes.
So we had people emailing their MP every single month, and it ended up with MPs actually putting pages on their websites about medical freedom, because they're like, you just keep emailing me, right? I'm just put a whole page on my website. This is my stance on medical freedom issues.
It was incredible what happened with the vaccine mandate, as well as all the other COVID regs, really, because who knows, like if nobody did anything and we just like, okay, the government's doing this now, who knows what kind of world we'd live in right now here in the UK, right?
Yeah, well, in Canada they did nothing. Like, obviously they did the big truckers convoy, but that was what, this year. They hadn't done anything until then. They'd all put their masks on, they'd all complied, and they still can't, like, even after the truckers convoy, they still can't get on a bus without a vaccine passport. They can't get on a bus, and there is absolutely no reason to think that it would have been any different here. Exactly. Any different whatsoever. Why would it have been any different here when we've seen what happened in New Zealand, Australia, Canada, America? It wouldn't have been any different. But we said no from pretty much day one. I was out on the streets on the 20th of April.
Definitely.
I was out protesting on the 20th of April, so less than a month after it started. I gave them the 3-week grace period.
That was it. I'm on the fucking streets now.
Yeah. So like, nice. On the day they announced the extension of lockdown on the 3-week thing, I started Save Our Rights, and I organised a protest for 4 days later. So no,
that's awesome.
Well, no, we're not doing this. We're not doing it. But back to the bills, and which bills that you'd be emailing your MP about. Another one is boycotts, divestments and sanctions bill. So this bill is where they want to stop public bodies being able to decide who they work with. So, for example, say if a university decided they wanted to not have any products with from like Monsanto or Unilever or something for good ethical reasons, they would be prevented from doing that. They would have to be forced to have those contracts. So again, it's just an overreach into public bodies' ability to make decisions and make ethical protests, essentially. obviously that was not going to affect that many people, but it's an important piece of the puzzle, again, just to be watching what they're doing, watching how they're trying to prevent any sort of protest or dissent. So it's an important one to look at. And then obviously talking about protesting, there's the Public Order Bill. So as we all know, the Police Crime Sentencing and Courts Bill has been passed and is enacted, and that is really problematic for protesting. That had a whole section on protesting, had some other stuff which was fine, but there was a whole section on protesting which was really problematic. So it says, about being able to put restrictions on one-man protests, noisy protests, road blockages, and so on and so forth. And that was bad enough. And then right at the last stages, they added a whole load of extra amendments which were going to make it even worse. But the government actually suffered 14 defeats. We were outside lobbying the Lords every single day when it was in the Lords, and the Lords actually voted it all down. So the government suffered 14 defeats then. So that was an amazing effort from the people being there each day. So we were there, and now, but because they suffered 14 defeats, they brought those 14 pieces back and made a new bill because they're really upset about it. So they're trying again. And these are really bad in terms of protesting. So there's, making it an offence to lock on. Now, obviously, we've seen people insulate Britain, and that's been problematic. And not all of us would necessarily agree, but at the same time, it's a protest. And, I don't think they're going to win any favors or public opinion that way, but that's up to them. But suffragettes were locking on. People have been chaining themselves to things for the whole of history in terms of protesting. That's a standard thing. It's not a new thing. And the government are acting like it's this new nuisance thing and that it has to be stopped. So they're going to make it an offence to lock on, and even be equipped to lock on. So, but lots of people lock on with bike locks. So if you've got a bike lock in your bag, you could be charged with the offence of planning to lock on. They're also going to introduce stop and search powers without suspicion at protests, meaning the police can stop and search absolutely anyone for any reason. They don't have to have a reason. They don't have to have any suspicion of a crime. They can just decide they want to stop and search anybody. And if you resist, you could actually go to jail. So people will be forced to be stopped and searched, which is just complete violation of our human rights and our right to privacy. And then further than that, they also want to basically put in place that they can put injunctions on people. So you don't have to have committed a crime. There has to be no evidence that you're even planning on committing a crime. But if they decide that you're going to organise a protest that they don't like, they can basically slap an injunction on you or your organisation and say that you can't organise a protest, promote a protest, encourage others to attend the protest. They can decide that you can't talk to certain people, so maybe we wouldn't be allowed to speak to each other anymore. You can't attend certain places at certain times. You can't go, and they can even put ankle tags on you to check you're not going out organising protests, which is just insane. I'll have an ankle tag by the end of the year,
No, not if we have anything to do with it.
Well, yeah, if it got through, you can just see it, can't you? Especially because I've now got 5 protesting charges to my name. They're going to go, oh, troublemaker there. So that's really problematic in terms of protesting. And it's they know they're bringing in all this stuff that we don't like, and they are so they're trying to make it so that we can't protest about it. Now, the really bad thing about this is at report stage. I myself didn't realize it was that far through. So that means it's got through first, second reading and committee stage. And it's now at report stage, which is really bad. And there's been nothing in the media. I don't know where the group Kill the Bill has gone, because they were losing their mind over the Police Crime Sentencing Courts Bill, supposedly. But this is worse, and they're nowhere to be seen. There's been no action from anybody, and it's just gone completely under the radar because of cost of living and Boris being Boris and all that sort of stuff. So there's been plenty of distractions. So that's problematic. That's that could even be through by the end of the year. maybe till January if we don't get our skates on. So we're going to have to really, we're going to have to mostly focus on the Lords. There is still more we can do, but we will have to really get a shimmy on that one, because that one's really bad and quite far through. And then another one, which is also at report stage, is so is the online harms bill. So actually it's been renamed the online safety bill, because it was called the online harms bill, but then they realized that it sounded bad, and so they tried to make it sound good by calling it the online safety bill.
You can imagine how they come to those conclusions, right? The data harvesting and the less likes here and the more likes here and shit. Like that's how
Yeah.
they did the
Yeah, people were kicking up a fuss about the online harms bill, going, this is really harmful, and they're like, let's call it a safety bill. Then they have to say it's really safe. Now, this bill, it's suggesting that it's going to protect children from being able to access porn online, which would be great. I mean, it's completely ineffective. If that was actually what they're aiming to do, what the measures in this bill don't actually achieve that. But I wouldn't be sad about it being harder for kids to access porn online, but this isn't going to actually do that. But there's this one clause in it, which it says that legal but harmful content has to be taken down, or big tech companies will be fined extortionate amounts. Now, as we've seen over the last 2 years, what they deem legal but harmful is madness. I remember one of our Save Our Rights Facebook groups got a big warning because somebody shared a Freedom of Information request from the Met Police that said that no Met Police officers had died or been seriously ill with COVID. So, and all that was posted was the picture of that, but it got a huge warning saying that it was going to cause distrust in the government's messaging, and therefore could cause harm. So, there's a perfect example of legal but harmful content in their eyes, and and if the companies are now going to be faced with potentially huge fines, you just know it's going to get even worse, because they're just going to cover everything. Why not? They can just blame it on the government will blame it on them, and nobody will be able to stop it. But what counts as legal but harmful? Conservative religious views, or anything that goes against the government. Thinking for yourself, anything like that. So if you think censorship is currently bad right now, it's going to get a whole lot worse. So you look at it and it's like, okay, so we've got these bills that are taking away your right to privacy, your human rights in total, paving the way for social crediting, but they're also going to stop you speaking out about it online, and they also want to stop you speaking out on the streets as well. So it's like they're going to do all these awful things and then make it impossible to do anything about it, is what they're aiming for. So again, these are problematic in and of themselves, but when you add them up with the other things that they're doing, they don't want us protesting about, they don't want us saying anything about, it's really problematic. And that is also in its report stage, so has got through quite a few bits, parts of it, and report stage will come up September, October time, and it's problematic. So again, really important to be doing something about that, along with the public order bill. And the other one they've got is the National Security Bill. So this is basically going to pave the way for journalists and whistleblowers to be treated as spies and face up to 14 years in jail for releasing information that the government doesn't want releasing. So you only have to think of Julian Assange as an example. And because at the moment, if you release something that's classified, you have always got the defense of it's in the public interest. So if there's something that you've released and it's in the public interest, then yes, in theory they could do you for releasing classified documents, but If the defense is there, the defense is there, and you don't get prosecuted. They want to remove that as a defense. So nobody will be able to use in the public interest as a defense. They absolutely lost their minds over, the video of Matt Hancock having an affair.
Yeah.
So that CCTV footage was leaked by somebody in the office, and they lost their minds over that. And they went and raided people's homes trying to figure out who it was. They literally sent people around raiding homes because it's technically classified documentation, and they lost their minds.
Shag,
A classified shag. So, so if we want journalists to be able to tell the truth and hold the government to account, like if we're not able to speak out online, we're not allowed to get on the streets. We need journalists to do it, but they're going to be facing up to 14 years in jail. Now that is a huge risk, like 14 years is a long time. So yeah, and they're trying to essentially say that it's worse than being a spy, because their argument is, if you're a spy, say if you're a Russian spy, you're only going to pass the information back to the Russian authorities. Whereas if you're a journalist and you release a document, the whole world can see it, and that's worse than being a Russian spy, apparently. So who knew? But that's in really early phases. So that's not, the draft hasn't even been finished yet. So that's in consultation phase. So there is plenty of time to have an influence over that. And the main thing we need there is to maintain the public order and the public interest defense in that, because then we've always got that to fall back on, even if they don't like it. I mean, whether that'll actually help you, I don't know, because as we've seen, the judiciary can be quite harsh.
Absolutely. Even getting educated about all of these things that are happening, and getting it together, thinking about how to then relate it to other people. It's very, very useful, right? That's what we can do.
And then obviously we've got the attack on children and their educations. So we've got the schools bill, which is just essentially trying to make it impossible to home educate. That's the main premise here. And also it's giving the local authority a lot of scope to take control of your child. So currently, obviously if a child's in a neglectful or abusive home, the local authority can step in and remove that child, take control of that child, and so on and so forth. And that is right and good when a child is not being looked after. Nobody'd argue with that. But they are now trying to make it so that they can step in because your kid didn't go to school for a few days. So say if your child's got mental health issues, say if your child's being bullied or something like that, and you decide to keep them home because you know your child best, and you make a judgment call and keep them home for a couple of months to recuperate or whatever it is they need, the local authority do not agree. They can take control of your child. And
that's fucked, right? No, man.
So awful. Like, no, get off my kid. I had about 3 months off in year 11 because my mental health was shot to pieces. And, can you imagine if the local authority had come in and taken control and forced me to school? Like, it would have just been hell. So that's what they're looking to do, is lower that bar right down to when they can take control, to just if you've had too much time off school and they don't agree that you should have had it off, which is shocking, absolutely shocking. They also want to make home education really, really difficult. They want DBS checks for parents if you're home educating. Like, if you send your kid to school, even though you look after them all summer holiday, you don't need a DBS check. But if you want to home educate, you need a DBS check to look after your own child. If grandma comes around and looks after them for a couple of hours a week, and while she's there, she does some schooling with them, they'll want her Ofsted registered, which will also mean a DBS check. And then you'll have to register as a school, which is just insanity. Like,
you'd have to register like your home as a school.
Yeah, because grandma's coming around looking after the kids and doing some teaching. Like, I'll give over. Like, it's just the most insane amount of interference, which is just completely unnecessary.
It's amazing, really, like all these different angles, and like it just shows how much power we still have and how they're like so desperate to try and take it away from us.
Yeah, they want to stop us speaking out. They want to stop us getting on the streets. They want to stop us having decentralized currency. They want to stop us in every which way, and they want to stop us educating our children out of their propaganda machine. They want to make it so difficult. They're not outlawing home ed, because that's pretty bad. So they're just making it nigh impossible to do. That's what they're doing. And again, it's for those poor children that are abused. Well, no, there's plenty of legislation already in place to protect children who are vulnerable or in dangerous situations. Of course, that's a good thing, but there is legislation in place for that. You don't need more. And this isn't actually going to achieve that. If you've got what's going to happen if you've got a DBS check that says you were once drunk and disorderly as a teenager? Is that it? Are they going to say you can't home educate a child? Why? What? No, stop it. So so that's really problematic in terms of anybody who wants to protect the right to parent their children. The fact that they can come in and take your child, even if they go to school 97% of the time, and take control of your child, and then also just making home education nigh impossible, is really problematic. And then further to that, there's also the higher education bill. So this is a bill about university. So it's basically making university like this elitist thing. And so, for example, if you're 16 and you're doing your maths and English GCSEs, if you fail them the first time, even if you go back to school or college and do them another time the next year and pass and get top marks, you won't be eligible for student finance when you go to university because you failed them the first time.
Just putting pressure on the kids, more mental pressure.
So much mental pressure.
Yeah.
My daughter, because obviously my daughter's just done a GCSE. She's like, well, this applied to me, and I'm like, it shouldn't do, because it shouldn't come in till after you've done yours, so it shouldn't be retrospective. But it's that's a lot of pressure. And again, if you apply for university and you don't quite make the grades, currently what you can do is you can do a foundation year. So obviously you try and make the grades so you can just go straight into university. But if you don't, there's this halfway house of a foundation year. They're cancelling those as well wherever they can. So again, you make the grades at A level or no uni. So again, just making it really hard. Then once you get to uni, they are looking to control how many people, how many places there are, and what courses are available. And they only want courses where within 6 months of leaving, 60% of the graduates are in highly skilled jobs, e.g. earning over £45,000 a year. If it doesn't do that, they don't want it. They don't want to fund it. So because this bill is likely to come in the next school year, some universities have actually already cancelled courses. So Sheffield Hallam has cancelled English language, English literature, education studies, all the humanities, and any niche courses, with immediate effect, meaning that there will be no October intake. Now, the kids that had applied for those courses and accepted courses have now just had their degrees taken away from them, their courses taken away. And these are the poor kids that have just done their GCSEs and A-levels through lockdown. So they've just struggled through doing all of that through lockdown. They apply for uni, they accept their place, and then they've just announced that they're cancelling these courses because the government doesn't want to fund them anymore. So, you will only do courses that are basically government approved and that will make you a perfect candidate for a capitalist society. Nothing else will do. And, and it will be elitist, and only the best will get to go work in their
Maybe the universities just destroy themselves. I mean, people realize you can get information elsewhere.
Well, I mean, yeah. I'm not necessarily sold on the idea of university. I told my 16-year-old not to bother going to college myself. But it's that we should have the choice. It shouldn't be elitist, and you should be able to study whatever it is you're actually interested in, and there should be courses for everybody, because variety is what creates the wonder of the world. I've got a good friend who did a philosophy degree. That doesn't lead to any sort of job of any sort of, but he's a great person to talk to about what's going on in the world at the moment, because the insights that he has, I've never heard anybody else speak about it in the way he does, because of his philosophy degree. He understands so much about how totalitarianism comes into play, and all this sort of stuff. And so these things are really valuable, but not financially. It's not economically valuable. So they don't want, so that it would be all the arts programs as well. There won't be arts degrees. There won't be, because that doesn't lead to a financially stable job, and they don't want that. So all the arts will go. And it's like they're just devaluing anything that doesn't make money, which is really problematic. So that's another one where they're just exerting control and overreaching, where they just don't need to interfere. Just go away, like get out. Yeah, essentially that. And then the last bill is the Genetic Technology Precision Breeding Bill.
That's a mouthful, yeah.
Wow, oh, it is. Deadly. Yeah, it took me quite a while to learn that one.
Can you do that one more time?
Genetic Technology Precision Breeding Bill.
Jeez, no, I'm not even going to try and repeat that.
So this is where they want to, again, the EU had strict regulations on how crops and animals could be bred for consumption. There was like really stringent rules on this, and the government just wants to remove that. So you're going to end up with like mutated versions of everything. Like everything will be bred in like a really weird and specific way. Like, so they're going to use genetic technology to do precision breeding is the plan. And what they'll do, what in the breeding process is completely up to them. They're basically lifting off the restrictions so they can do whatever they like. But the scary thing about it is that they're in this legislation, they're also removing all necessity for labeling. There'll be no label.
That's it.
So now we know there's loads of crap food in the supermarkets as it is, but you can turn it over, you can read the ingredients list, and you can see how crap it is. Now, and then you can choose not to buy it. But so like for me, for example, we try to not buy anything with more than 5 ingredients. That's kind of like our kind of standard rule. And we tend to just buy things like peppers or courgettes, but you're no longer going to know if it's some mutant version of it that's actually how it's been bred. Does it even have any nutrients left, or is it just being bred because it's hardy and will withstand a frost? So they're just going to butcher everything, and including animals. And obviously,
genetically modified animals.
Yes.
Jeez.
They're going to use genetic technology to precision breed those animals so they're nice and fat and juicy. So we're just going to end up with so you might end up going into a supermarket and it'll say an organic free range chicken. Now, it might have been brought up in an organic way, and it might have been brought up in a free range environment. But if it was a Frankenstein chicken in the breeding stage, you're not going to know. You're not going to know if it was pumped full of hormones, pumped full of this, pumped full of that, because it's not going to be on there. And they're not going to tell us. So, it's really I don't like them playing God with animals, especially. That's really problematic in my opinion. Because once they start having, because animals is the first stage. We're going to genetically breed all of these animals so they're super fertile, or they do this, or they're super this or super that. Then they're just going to start going, oh, we do that with humans too. We can just we've discovered how we can pick the right genes, and we can just have a superior race. You can see it, can't you? We're going to get these genes. We've decided these are the superior genes. This combination is a superior race. And we're going to make sure that we only have babies that have these genes because we've decided they're the best. And it's why wouldn't they? If they can do that with animals, if that's what they're trying to do with animals right now, and our fruit and veg, then why wouldn't it move on to humans too?
Yeah, when you put it like that, it makes sense, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And and if we've lost our human rights, and again, they could argue it's in the public interest. If they can produce a superior race that doesn't get heart disease or diabetes, then why would we not want it? Surely that's in the wider public interest to have this super healthy, superior race.
Rather than people that just take care of themselves, perhaps.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, like who wants that?
Yeah.
So yeah, those are the 10 bills. And like I say, when you put them all together, it's just an absolute horror show, basically. Each one's bad enough on its own, but then the combination is just outrageous. So this is why, we've really got to start, like I say, you can go to saveourrights.uk, click take action, email your MP, get that bit done so that you've ticked that box, and we'll keep on top of the rest of the important points. But then you need to come out to the events. We've obviously got 27th of August. And then through September, October is the party conferences. So these are actually really interesting times to lobby, because you can actually get in front of all the MPs. So if you are outside protesting at the party conferences, all the MPs have to walk directly past you. They don't have to do that at Parliament Square because they've got secret entrances. So they can just ignore you and pretend you're not happening. But for us to go, so we're going to go to each party conference and we're going to be outside. So there's one in Birmingham, there's one in Manchester, one in Birmingham, one in Liverpool, one in Brighton, one in Aberdeen that we're going to attend, and we'll be releasing the dates for those. The more people we can get, the better, because we want to make a huge ruckus outside each and every day. So every day when they walk in, we're right there in their faces. It's the best opportunity to be in their faces. We have to just not get ourselves into trouble, but at the same time make our point and go, we can see what you're doing and you need to stop. So yeah, we're gonna, which is a new action, we've never done that before, but the times now really call for doing something extra, doing something new, as well as we've had really great success by lobbying via email and getting out on the streets, but these bills call for extra actions, and this is one. It's going to the party conferences to really get in front of all of them and make sure they can see us, and we see us seeing them. We can see what they're doing. So yeah, lots to do.
Oh yes, we keep going.
We do, and put local outreach as well, because like I say, this is not as much of a controversial issue as COVID. We haven't actually really come up against resistance. We haven't come up against anyone who goes, oh no, I want all those bills. And the great thing is, because there is 10 of them, you can usually find one that pertains to a particular, like each person, so pretty much everybody, this nation, there'll be one that they'd particularly dislike. So it won't be the same for everyone. Some people will be really horrified that journalists can't speak out. Others won't care about journalists, but they will care about not being able to home educate. Or like I spoke to a very nice lady, a very old lady in Truro, when I was down there for a protest, who was absolutely horrified by the genetic technology precision breeding bill, because she's really old school. She goes to a butcher's to buy her food, and she goes to the local grocers to buy her fruit and veg. The thought that this could be under threat, she goes there because she doesn't want anything that's been messed with. She's really old school. So there's a bill for everybody.
That's it.
And like the XR lot, for example, whether we agree on other issues, they ought to be up in arms about the protesting, for example. They ought to be as frustrated by that, because that's what they love to protest. So why aren't they? So there's a bill for everyone. There is the potential to get everybody in this nation on board and behind this campaign, and that is what we need. And then that gives us, because once we've got everybody on board and we've got that connection with them, we can build into other areas, because ultimately the whole political system is corrupt. But we can't tackle that currently because these bills need to be tackled first, and also we don't have enough people that trust us, and this is a way of building trust, building that connection, building that unity for us to take future actions as well. So it's a real opportunity to unite the nation, and we've got to take it. So there's leaflets on the Save Our Rights page as well. There's leaflets that you can download and hand out, and there's placard designs as well for anybody that does like yellow boards on roundabouts, the rebel and roundabout stuff. We've got placard designs as well that you can download and have printed up for your local events. And yeah, so lots to do. We don't get to rest. No resting. We keep going. That's okay.
And so you've got the time. We could just talk a little bit about how you actually got to where you are right now, and what your journey's been like. Maybe we can start pre 2020.
Yeah, so I became a mum quite young. So I had my eldest when I was 19, and I mostly just did the mum thing from then for the next like 10 years. And then I found I was a single mum. I was had to leave a domestic abuse relationship and found myself on my own with a 9-year-old, a 4-year-old, a 3-year-old, and a 1-year-old. And it was the 2017 snap general election, and it was that thing of, in my position, having a Tory government really doesn't suit us. As a single mum, Tory governments do not look on you favorably. So I got involved in politics then because in my local constituency, we had a Tory MP who had won the previous election with only 698 votes. And there was a good Labour option. So I got involved in campaigning, and we won the seat. He won with a 10,000 majority. So it was like a great start into kind of any sort of political lobbying. I was like, oh, this works. This is great. And I then actually got a job in his office working on politics, policy advice, and campaigning. So went and worked in his office. And this is when I was a bit naive, God love me. And I thought, if you just get a good MP in there, and I got in there too, then we can actually do something to help. And that's when I really saw the political system for what it is. And it is designed, it was designed hundreds of years ago by rich and powerful people to keep rich and powerful people rich and powerful. And I really saw that there is actually no mechanisms to do good, even if you want to. So like my MP, we disagree vehemently on some issues, but other issues we're completely aligned. And he couldn't do anything. He was an MP and he still couldn't do anything. And it's a really problematic system. So
if you had like 100 on the same side,
well, then you might be able to get, that's when you've got the potential, but it's hard to get that because everyone's scared of losing the whip. So you've got the whip, which tells you how to vote, basically. So you get a 1-line whip, which goes, you should probably vote this way, but they don't really care. Then you get a 2-line whip, which is like, vote this way. 3-line whip is like, you vote this way or you're going to get kicked out of the party. If you get kicked out of the party, what that means is at the next general election, you're going to have to run as an independent, which means you haven't got an affiliation. And often people actually vote for the colours, not the person. Lots of people go, oh, I'm voting Labour, not I'm voting for so-and-so. They're not actually bothered about who the MP is. So you're less likely to win your seats, so you're less likely to be able to, so people don't want to lose the whip. So they're very tightly controlled. They're very controlled once they get up there. Even if all their constituents are emailing and go, we want you to do this. If they're being controlled by above, then they can't do it without risking losing the seat. Now, obviously, the right thing would be for them to do it anyway and to represent their constituents and not worry about it. many of them aren't that brave. And so once I got in there, I was really horrified by how bad the system was. I'd thought it was pretty bad, but then I got in there and I realized we don't have a democracy. We have a pretense. It's just propaganda. It's not an actual democracy what we have. And so then obviously I left that job October 2019, because actually the job, the whole structure of the office had to be changed, and it didn't work for me as a single mum anymore. So I left on that reason. And then when I saw the COVID regulations being brought in, now obviously I had huge concerns that actually lockdowns were going to kill people. Having survived domestic violence, like my heart was just breaking for anybody in a domestic violence situation. And we saw murders double for a week during lockdown, which is just horrific and was always going to be the case. It was always going to be the case. And obviously it was quite clear that, there was going to be mental health crises, and people not getting doctor's appointments was going to mean they were going to die, and isolation was going to kill the elderly. Like, that was all really obvious to me from day dot. But my biggest concern was that not only was that really problematic, they hadn't followed any parliamentary protocol in bringing in the COVID regulations. There's a thing called the Civil Contingencies Act 2004, which was written in 2004. And it was a piece of legislation that basically enabled them to do everything they did during lockdown. But it had a 30-day maximum on it. And every 30 days, it had to come back to Parliament and be fully debated and fully considered again. And that's what they should have enacted. That, like, even if you don't agree with it, that's what they should have done. But they didn't. They brought in the health regulations, and then they also brought in the Coronavirus Act, neither of which followed parliamentary protocol. And it's like, wait a minute. Now, locking us down is bad for many reasons, but if they're doing it without following their own basic rules, of which are rubbish anyway, their rules are crap anyway, but at least if they're following them, you know what to expect from them. But when they abandoned their own rules, I was like, this is really bad. This is not good. This is not gonna, it's not gonna be done in 3 weeks. and it can't, if you don't call it out from day one, it's only going to get worse, which is what I knew. So, like I say, I gave them the 3-week grace period, because obviously if they had only done 3 weeks to flatten the curve, it would have been fine. Like, would it have been ideal? No. But would that much harm have been caused? No. We could have all survived a 3-week lockdown, right? So they had the 3 weeks. But then the day that they said they were going to extend it, like I say, I started Save Our Rights. I started a Save Our Rights Facebook group, and it said add 5 friends to get started. So I did that, and here we are.
Amazing, really, huh?
Yeah, well, yeah, because like I say, I started on the 16th of April. Said I was going to go out on the Monday, which was the 20th, and 6 people came to my first protest. I didn't even have a megaphone. I didn't even know that you needed a megaphone to lead a march. I didn't know. Never led a march.
People, really.
Yeah. Yeah, I know, but my voice was really hoarse by the end of it. And then we went out every week through lockdown take 1. Every Monday we were out in Brighton, and it just grew and grew and grew. And yeah, it just got bigger and bigger and bigger. And we were lucky that actually Sussex police were quite supportive. And they called it socially distanced exercise with placards.
Are you kidding? What the fuck is that?
Well, because you weren't allowed to go. So, like, we had this huge argument with them on our second one.
Awesome, when you think about it,
yeah. Because on our second one, there was this guy who runs all the protests, the police liaison officer that does all the protests. And he's like, look, I love protests. This is what I do. But you're not allowed to gather. And, you can't just break the law. And I went, and I said, yeah, but usually if there's a law that I don't like, I would organise a protest about it. And he went, that is what we'd want you to do. And he just blew his head. And so after that, he just managed to swing it so that as long as we didn't look too gathered and we stayed socially distanced while marching, they let us off. And occasionally you were too gathered today. There was too many of you. You were too close together. And they didn't like it when I did speeches because, again, people would gather around to hear and stuff. So we had a few hairy moments, but we just about managed to get away with it. Which, when I got charged with my first Brighton event in November, so my first November 2020, he rang me and he said, "You're going to get charged for a Brighton event." One that I wasn't even at. I was in Edinburgh. And I was like, what on earth? You've never, ever charged me for anything before. Why are you charging me now for one that I wasn't even at? And he said, the order has come from higher up than Sussex. So that was once Unite for Freedom had started and we were making big waves up in London. And so they started, an order came from higher up than Sussex to charge me for a Brighton event when they'd never charged me before. And then our next Brighton event in December 2020, the Met Police came down to police it.
Yeah, wow.
And they tried to arrest me, but I managed to escape. I had to duck out of the protests just before the end because I knew they were waiting to the end to arrest me, because they tried in the middle, but the whole crowd had crowded around them. So they backed off. So they were waiting until the end. So I ducked out for the end, and they staked out my house for like 4 hours and harassed my teenager when she got home. So yeah, so that was interesting. It all turned then because they didn't like Unite for Freedom and the waves we were having.
No doubt that terrified them. I imagine they were trying everything they could to stop that.
Yeah, we saw them in September 2020. They just came in and battened everyone. November 2020 up in London, they made 150 unlawful arrests, and it is now being proven in court that every single arrest in November 2020 in London was unlawful. And we're actually putting together a class action lawsuit to sue the police for unlawful arrests. So everybody who was arrested will be able to come forward, join the action, and can sue them for thousands of pounds. So thousands of pounds per hour.
The individual officer that arrested them, or officers, or would it be the police as a
the Met Police as a whole?
Okay, interesting.
So we've already got one case prepped and ready, and then we're gonna sort out reaching out to everybody else that was arrested that day, myself included. But the judge ruled that all their actions were unlawful that day. So that's
if anyone was listening, they're part of that 150. Get going.
Yeah. Do get in touch and follow Save Our Rights, because we will be posting about it when we're ready to bring in extra people on that. And I can't wait for that day in court. My lawyer's actually excited because he's like, we can do it. Yeah, like, yeah. So that's where I came from. I came from politics, and like I say, it's what's really helped in terms of lobbying, campaigning, and being able to explain legislation to people, because part of my job was reading legislation. It was it's a useful set of skills to be able to bring to the movement. So that's why.
Definitely, yes.
So yeah.
Awesome. And I think just to maybe close off with, there's another thing that you do that I also find very fascinating: the shared mutual interest of water.
Yes.
Would you like to just touch upon what you're doing with water?
Yeah, so I'm an affiliate for a company called Kangen, and so this is a water system that it took me 2.5 years of research to decide which water system to go for. Like, I'm sure anybody who's listening who has tried to decide what to do about water, like, has blown their brains out, because it is so complicated and you get so much conflicting advice. And obviously,
body at the end of the day, that's what I found was the best.
Pardon?
You just got to trust your body at the end of the day. Like, what water is the best for you? And that's my section.
So obviously I was looking at things like reverse osmosis and distillers, but the problem with those is they strip everything out. And so what you end up with is actually something that's quite acidic and corrosive. So if you strip everything out of water, you end up with an acidic and corrosive liquid, and it can leach minerals out your body if it's not got any minerals in. So what people end up having to do is then they have to remineralize it and so on and so forth. And it's just what the system that I found, the Kangen system, what it does is it removes everything that you don't want in there. So it removes everything like pesticides, it removes fluoride, it removes microplastics, it removes all of that, but it leaves all the good minerals in. So it leaves your magnesium, your sodium, your zinc, your potassium, all those good things that we want. And which is amazing. So it took me a long time to find one that did that. But then further than that, what it does is it puts it through electronic plates, so a process of electrolysis. Through this process of electrolysis, it means you can actually pick what pH water you want to start with. So I drink 9.5, which is alkaline, but then you can have from 2.5 up to 11.5. And what that means is you can actually use the other waters for various cleaning products. Like 2.5 is hydrochloric acid. So it's a hugely beneficial antibacterial. So you can use it to clean all your kitchen surfaces. You know, you can use it for all that hand sanitizer that you like to use, because we all love hand sanitizer.
Oh yeah,
You
bottle of hand sanitizer.
Yeah, and if you've got a sore throat, and you've got bacteria in the back, you can just spray a bit in there, and it'll kill off any bacteria. So you can use it for all sorts. 11.5 is you can use it in place of washing powder, because it's a degreaser and it will get any stains out. The 6 you can use as a facial toner and stuff, and replace half your beauty products with it. So you can actually, so not only do you get great drinking water from it, you can actually use it to replace a lot of your household products, which is amazing as well, because obviously we're all trying to rid our houses of toxins.
Yeah, there's a lot of chemicals in that shit.
Yeah, and but then also, so the electrolysis means that you get to pick what alkalinity you have, and obviously the more alkaline it is, the more good minerals it's got in it. But what it also does is it does this thing called where it microclusters the water. So regular water is quite stagnant, and that means H2O molecules all join together into imagine like a big bunch of grapes. Now, our cells only have like a small opening. It can't fit a whole bunch of grapes through. It can fit a grape through at a time. The electrolysis process breaks them down into single molecules again, which means that the water that you drink is just smooth and really hydrating. And it means it will get into your cells quicker and it's more readily absorbed. So you'll be more hydrated from less water because it's really easy to absorb. And when
That's
you drink it,
interesting you
just
mentioned that, actually, the phenomena of you can drink different quality of water and be more hydrated. I've definitely found that, like, lesser quality
yeah,
water doesn't make me or it doesn't fill me up in the hydration as much as clean water.
yeah, absolutely. And then the last thing it also does is, again, through the process of electrolysis, is it separates some of the hydrogen molecules out from the oxygen. And then, so this is called, oh my goodness, I forgot the name. So yeah, so you get, it's an antioxidant, molecular hydrogen. So you get molecular hydrogen, and molecular hydrogen is the most natural antioxidant in the world. And antioxidants are proven to kill free radicals in the body. They will literally actively attack disease. And this means that you've got this healing power in the water. Now, when I was researching it and I was going, yeah, but is this even natural? Like, this is like so much. And there are about 6 places across the world where this occurs naturally. And one of them is, and all 6 of them are renowned for their magic healing water, like Lourdes in France. So people literally travel from around the world to drink this magical healing water. And what they've found, this magical healing water is magical and healing because it's got molecular hydrogen in it. But now you can create that at home. And they actually use this in all Japanese hospitals because it is healing. It does help fight disease. So they use it in every Japanese hospital. So it's clean. You've got rid of all the toxins that you don't want in there. You know, you've got all your minerals that you need and you want in there. It's broken down into microclusters, and you've got molecular hydrogen, which kills disease. Alkaline environment also kills disease, but then also you can use it to replace all your household products because you've got a whole range of pHs to use. So yeah, after 2.5 years of research, I was thrilled to come across it. And this is, yeah, like I say, I'm an affiliate for the company, so anybody who's interested can find me on my personal profile, which is Louise Creffield, and yeah, and I can put you in touch and answer any questions and stuff, because yeah, we need to be protecting, because obviously the Health and Care Act passed last year, which does give the government the powers to fluoridate all of our water,
which we're going to stop that too.
and which we're working on stopping too. We're looking at a launching court case on that one. But yeah, so but even without that, that the water is full of pesticides.
It's
And
already a very bad state, and they're trying to make it worse. So
yeah, even without fluoride in it, it's not something you want to be drinking. And my kids now won't drink tap water. They've got so used to it. Like, Mummy, I don't like the bad water. They call it the bad water. That it tastes weird. And I'm like, I know it tastes weird, right? But they've been drinking it all their lives. But after a few months of drinking Kangen water, they're like, don't want it. Don't want it. So yeah, so that's something that, and this is where we empower ourselves, is by keeping ourselves well and healthy. Because if we're sick and we're like poisoning ourselves, we're going to find this much harder to resist all the other stuff that they've got planned for us.
Exactly, that's it.
So we need to be in our fittest, healthiest state that we possibly can. So yeah, so you can get in touch with me about that as well, and that's something I really believe in. And yeah, so yeah.
Great. Well, is there anything else you'd like to say to the public? Also got to hear.
No, just be willing to take action. Trust that our actions do work. Like, our actions did work. Look at where we are. We never had domestic vaccine passports. We never did. Everywhere else did. You couldn't. And yeah, we had to endure quite a lot, but we overturned the NHS mandates and the care home mandates. They were the only place they were ever mandated, and we overturned them. What we are doing does work. They're never going to give us credit for it, because that'd be madness. They'd stood up there and gone, right, we're going to cancel the NHS mandate because that lot out there keep protesting, and they've managed to convince 100,000 NHS workers to not do it too. Well, that would have just given us way too much power.
Yep. That's how close it is, right? That's just how close.
Yeah, can you imagine if that had been in the news, that the reason they overturned it was because of us? Like, everybody would have got out on the streets then going, oh, wait a minute, this works. They don't want
exactly.
But so they blamed it on Omicron. It wasn't ever anything to do with Omicron. It was because of the work we'd done, and it was because NHS 100K only existed because they came to our protests. So the founder of NHS 100K came to May and June 2021, realized that if she wanted to resist this, they wouldn't be alone. They weren't going to be alone, because we were out there and everybody could see that we were out there. And that is what emboldened them to stand up and say no. And then obviously we had the Workers for England union supporting them. We managed to get a union on board to support them. So they weren't alone. Whereas if we hadn't been out on the streets and they thought they were alone, they wouldn't have resisted. They wouldn't have said no themselves either. So this ripples out into so many different ways, the actions that we do, and getting out on the streets is really, really important. And don't underestimate it, and recognize the power that we've wielded and the power that we've had and the amazing effects that we've had. We have had the least amount of restrictions in the world, other than various small African countries and stuff. But out of the Western world, we have done the best, and that is because of our resistance. It's not because they decided that. It's not because Boris couldn't be bothered. It's because we said no. So we have to say no to the rest of it too, and keep going, keep taking the effort, keep getting out there. Yes, I know people are tired. We've been doing it for a couple of years, but we keep going because it's not over yet.
We keep going. Absolutely. Awesome. Thank you, Louise. It's been a pleasure.
My pleasure.
Cool. I'll see you on the streets.
See you on the streets.